Allah praises the sacrifice of parents for their children, because just like you can't remember the miracle of your birth, you can't possibly remember the pain of your mother's labor and the sleepless nights and worry that your parents had while raising you in infancy. And it may be that you didn't appreciate the sacrifices of your own parents until you had your own children. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَوَصَّيْنَا الْإِنسَانَ بِوَالِدَيْهِ إِحْسَانًا حَمَلَتْهُ أُمُّهُ كُرْهًا وَوَضَعَتْهُ كُرْهًا وَحَمْلُهُ وَفِصَالُهُ 30 شهرا حتى إذا بلغ أشده وبلغ 40 سنة قال رب أوزعني أن أشكر نعمتك التي أنعمت علي وعلى والدي وأن أعمل صالحا ترضاه وأصلح لي في ذريتي إني تبت إليك وإني من المسلمين. We have commanded people to honor their parents. Their mothers bore them in pain and delivered them in pain, and their period of labor and weaning is 30 months, until that time comes when the child reaches their own age of 40, meaning perhaps they see life through their parents' vantage point. They say, "My Lord, inspire me to always be thankful for your favors, which you blessed me and my parents with, and to do good deeds that please you, and instill righteousness in my offspring. I truly repent to you, and I am amongst the Muslims." Allah commands us by default to honor the sacrifices of our parents. But not everyone had the same parental influences growing up. Musa alayhi salam grew up in the household of Fir'aun, the most evil tyrant in history, but also with a pious woman in Asya who perfected her faith and was utterly selfless. A child in his place could have easily inclined to become a narcissistic tyrant, just like the father figure. But no one hated oppression more than Musa alayhi salam. Instead, he sacrifices everything, saving his people, and becomes this selfless human being, just like Asya. Ibrahim alayhi salam was tested with an abusive father who threw him into a fire. But look at the loving father Ibrahim alayhi salam grew up to become to his children. In fact, some of the scholars say that Ibrahim comes from the words Ab-Rahim, which means a merciful father. And he is, of course, Abul Anbiya, the father of the prophets. Sometimes a child can respond to abuse by manifesting the opposite qualities of their parents. But it can take time to unlearn those things. Look at the story of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu. He hated his father al-Khattab because of how abusive he was. And Umar was on track to be just like him before Islam. But then through Islam, he was able to redirect that energy towards this relentless pursuit of truth and justice in the world. And he becomes an exemplary father to his own children. SubhanAllah, look at how much Abdullah ibn Umar loved Umar compared to how much Umar hated al-Khattab. Because having a bad father led him to becoming one of the greatest ever. So while Umar was the opposite of his father, Abdullah became a carbon copy of him. And that's where beautiful parenting comes in. Look at 2 of the 4 women who perfected their faith. They were a mother and a daughter. The queen of the heart of the Prophet ﷺ, Khadija radiallahu anha, and the queen of Jannah, Fatima radiallahu anha. Look at how Al-Hasan and Al-Hussein, the masters of the youth of paradise, manifested the beautiful qualities of courage and leadership and were willing to stand alone for the truth. Was it not their father Ali radiallahu anhu, who was once the single youth that was willing to courageously stand by our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he stood alone on Mount Safa? In any case, you have to understand that your parents had parents too, and they made choices with those influences. It may be that one of your parents had to unlearn some sort of harshness and be the parent to you that they wish they had. And it may be that their parents saw in you an opportunity to show more love and care than they did to their own son or daughter. And opposites attract, right? What if your parents had opposite childhoods, but they both found their way to Allah through it all, and then to each other? In many ways, our childhood is a second womb, and our personalities are all somehow molded by those experiences, which are most likely a mixed bag of good and bad. But even if we feel it was harder than others, we should be careful not to write off our entire childhood as exclusively trauma and forget the love and mercy that was given to us at times where we may have been at our most vulnerable. No parent is perfect, and sometimes we have to learn to come to terms with their shortcomings without becoming resentful. And while your parents are your greatest influence, you are not your parents. You have your own personality and qualities. So you don't get to automatically claim their good qualities as your own, nor should you be limited by their shortcomings.